Oh, welcome, sleepy summoner, and let the quiet of the evening draw close around you. Before you drift into dreams, allow me to guide you through the soft twilight where stories and spirits mingle, where emotions become shapes and shadows learn to whisper. Breathe slowly now, for what follows is not a tale of terror, but a gentle walk through the oldest feelings of Runeterra, where demons are born not of malice, but of the hearts that imagine them. Yet, even with such awareness, the thread of memory can tangle with demons in subtle ways. In the bustling upper tiers of Piltover, there is a watchmaker known for crafting timepieces that are both precise and lyrical. Her clocks do not merely mark seconds. They chime melodies at noon, whisper lullabies at dusk, and tell brief stories when wound. Each story is different, tied to the piece's owner. The watchmaker listens to her clients speak of their lives and imbues the mechanisms with fragments of their narratives. One day, an elderly man brought her a box full of broken gears. He wished for a clock that would let him relive the day he married his late husband, a moment he considered perfect. The watchmaker listened, then cautioned him. "Perfection is a single note," she said. "Repeat it too often, and the melody dulls." Nevertheless, she constructed a clock that, when opened, played a visual and auditory recreation of the man's wedding day. He watched it over and over, smiling at first. But as weeks passed, he began to neglect meals, friends, and the present. His home dimmed, but the clock glowed bright. Late one night, as he wound it for the 100th time, he heard a second ticking, out of rhythm. He looked up to see a shadow in the corner of his room, a figure with many eyes, each reflecting a different day from his past. It was the demon of remembrance, drawn by his obsessive dwelling on a memory. "Stay with me," it murmured, its voice like turning pages. The man felt torn. He loved his memory, but he did not wish to be consumed. In desperation, he closed the clock and walked to the watchmaker's shop. They sat together, winding the clock slowly while talking about other days, the difficult ones, the joyful ones, the ordinary ones. The clock's glow softened. The demon lingered at the door, then faded as the man's life expanded beyond a single moment. From then on, the watchmaker added a tiny inscription inside each timepiece. "Do not live here." It served as a reminder that memories are treasures to visit, not homes to move into. This story is shared by clockmakers across Runeterra, and though the demon of remembrance is not officially counted among the 10, its whisper reminds all who listen that the past must be balanced with the present. The landscape of Runeterra itself reflects these lessons. Rivers change course, mountains erode, forests regrow after fires. Nations rise and fall, and with them the emotions that dominate their people shift. Where once violence reigned and Atakan grew fat, fields of peace now yield lesser demons of regret and nostalgia. Where agony once birthed Evelynn, compassion now grows healers who ease pain before it becomes a feast for demons. Where fear once called forth Fiddlesticks and Nocturne, courage and camaraderie build communities that laugh together in the dark. The world is not static, and neither are its spirits. In Demacia, the rigid fear of magic has softened in some places, allowing for stories that include demons as metaphor rather than monsters. In Noxus, a hunger for conquest has been tempered by leaders like Swain, who understand the cost of unbridled ambition. In Ionia, the tension between progress and tradition remains, but the people walk the path with more awareness of the Azakana at their heels. In Piltover and Zaun, innovation continues, but there is greater discussion about ethical progress, about preventing new forms of desire and sorrow from becoming demons. In Shurima, ascended beings remind mortals that power must be wielded responsibly, or it calls forth something like Ashlesh. On the high slopes of Targon, seekers look to the stars and see not just the possibility of ascension, but the reflection of their own inner landscapes. Even in the spiritual realms, change is constant. Demons evolve as emotions evolve, adapting to new fears, new desires, new joys. Some fade as their source dwindles, like a demon of famine when a community learns to share. Others arise, like a demon of isolation in a world increasingly connected by hextech but disconnected by hearts. The story we tell about demons is therefore not a static recorder but a living guide, updated by every person who feels and reflects, who listens and speaks, who chooses balance over extremes. As long as there are mortals, there will be demons, but there will also be stories, songs and rituals to greet them. The cycle continues, not as a loop that traps, but as a spiral that rises, each rotation bringing new understanding and deeper harmony. There are other practices less well known that speak to the human capacity to navigate with demons at their periphery. In a small valley of the Freljord, where ice plains meet forests of evergreen, storytellers gather to share secrets under the northern lights. They call it the Night of Whispering Winds. The valley's cliffs are carved with faces, smiling, frowning, serene, and each represents an emotion. Villagers and travelers alike stand before the face that matches their secret and speak softly into the stone's ear. The wind carries their words into the earth. According to legend, the valley houses a demon of secrets who once roamed free, sowing distrust among neighboring tribes. It thrived when people held their secrets tight, using them to blackmail and betray. One winter, when supplies were scarce and suspicion high, an elder named Hilda decided to break the demon's hold. She climbed to the highest cliff and shouted her own secrets into the cold night. Others joined her. Their voices rose like a choir. The demon, robbed of its fuel, tried to whisper but found no ears willing to listen. It retreated to the valley. Now it stays there, a bound custodian, and the people's secrets are given willingly to the wind. This ritual teaches that secrets are part of life, but sharing them in a trusted space disarms those who would use them harmfully. The demon of secrets still exists, but it listens without malice, content to hear and to forget. One might think these rituals remove all danger, but in truth they offer frameworks for encounters that cannot be avoided. A story from the outskirts of Bilgewater tells of a lone fisher who sailed out during a fog so thick it muffled the bell of the harbour. The fisher sought a good catch, but the sea was silent. Hours passed, and the fog did not lift. Then he heard laughter, not the raucous laughter of sailors, but the high, tinkling giggle of a child. It came from every direction. He called out, but no one answered. The water below him began to ripple. Shapes swam just beneath the surface, pale, glimmering forms with long fingers. They tickled the hull of his boat, making it rock. The giggling grew. Fear tightened the fisher's throat. He had heard tales of creatures that lured sailors with laughter, only to drag them under. He thought of turning back, but he could not see the shore. Remembering old stories, he closed his eyes and laughed with the voices. His laughter was honest and deep, driven by memories of his children plashing in puddles during rainstorms. The giggling paused, then resumed, mirroring his rhythm. The forms beneath the water did not overturn his boat. Instead, they circled it, like dolphins accompanying a ship. When the fog lifted, the fisher found himself near a reef teeming with fish. He filled his nets and returned home, telling others of his strange companions. Some believe he encountered lesser demons of delight, attracted by his unease. By meeting laughter with sincere laughter, he transformed the moment from terror to joy, denying them the meal of his fear. In ancient archives hidden in the libraries of Piltover and Bandle City, scholars speak of the 10 not as a fixed roster, but as a concept, a way to group the most potent archetypes of emotion. Ashlesh, as the demon of joy, is named because Nyla's story brought it to light. Fiddlesticks, the demon of fear, is another. Evelynn, the demon of agony. Tahm Kench, the demon of desire. Nocturne, the demon of nightmares. And Atakan, the demon of violence, fill other seats. Swain's demon, associated with secrets, sits among them. Yet there are whispers of other chairs around that table. Some old Ionian scrolls mention a demon of remembrance, a being that feeds not on regret, but on nostalgia. It appears at twilight, evoking scenes from youth that become so enthralling that people forget to live in the present. There is talk of a demon of hunger that goes beyond Tahm Kench's desire, embodying insatiability of all kinds from greed to ambition. And there is speculation about a demon of slumber, one that lulls people into endless dreams, promising escape from reality. These other names are not confirmed by modern law, but their presence in old songs suggests that emotions given too much weight can call forth forces as strong as any known demon. The 10, then, is not a closed council, but a mirror held up to the human heart. When certain emotions dominate cultures, a demon may rise to personify and exaggerate them. This understanding encourages vigilance. Just as a community's joy can spawn Ashlesh, its obsession with the past could awaken a demon of remembrance. Scholars argue about which demons belong to the 10, but all agree that the list is less important than the lesson. Balance emotions so that none becomes tyrant over the rest. These lessons reverberate through daily life in ways big and small. In Zorn's Undercity, children play a game where they take turns wearing a paper mask representing a demon. One child plays the demon and whispers temptations to others, encouraging them to steal sweets or stay up past curfew. The others must refuse, citing reasons rooted in community and self-care. The game teaches children to recognize the voice of destructive desire. In Noxian academies, instructors assign students to write letters they will never send, addressed to their future selves. They are told to fill these letters with fears, ambitions, regrets, and hopes. The letters are sealed and stored. Years later, the students read what they wrote and see how their feelings have changed. They learn that emotions are transient and that choices can be revisited. In Shuriman caravans, leaders encourage travelers to walk alone for a portion of the journey each day, listening to the desert winds and naming the feelings that arise. When they rejoin the group, they share their experiences, turning solitary introspection into collective wisdom. In the small villages of Targon, people bake loaves of bread shaped like demons with smiling faces and share them during festivals. Eating the bread symbolically consumes the demon, turning fear into nourishment and humor. These practices might seem quaint, but they are powerful because they normalize the act of engaging with inner shadows. They teach that demons are not outside forces to be slain by heroes, but aspects of life to be acknowledged, negotiated with, and transformed through community and personal growth. Beyond the comfort of empathy lies a landscape of emotions so vast that entire regions of Runeterra have built their cultural identities around them. Among these are the Demons of Sorrow, beings that are both ancient and newly born every day. In the mountains of Ionia, there is a monastery built beside a quiet lake where willow branches trail their leaves in the water. The monks there sing a melody with no words, only sighs. They believe that every sigh releases a fragment of sorrow into the air. On misty mornings, when the melody is at its most resonant, travelers have reported seeing a figure sitting on the opposite shore. It appears as a woman with long hair that flows into the lake, her face hidden by a veil. She holds an instrument fashioned from reeds. When she plays, her music has no beginning and no end. It wraps around listeners like a shawl woven from cold autumn air. The monks call her the Weeping Willow, a demon of sorrow who feeds not on tears, but on the refusal to release them. If a traveller hears her song and chooses to wade into the lake to join her, they find themselves sinking deeper as her melody grows louder. But if they listen, cry, and share their grief with another monk, the Weeping Willow's song fades and she returns to the mist. This story is whispered to novices as a lesson. Sorrow acknowledged becomes part of a shared human experience. Sorrow held in secret becomes a feast for a demon. Another tale of sorrow comes from Piltover, where progress echoes in the clangs of gears and the hiss of steam. Among its gold-edged towers lives an aging composer whose fingers once flew across piano keys like birds. As his fame grew, he performed in concert halls filled with glittering audiences. One night, after a performance, he walked home under flickering street lamps. He heard a note just beyond his range of hearing, like the memory of a sound. It followed him, weaving in and out of the hum of the city. At home, he sat at his piano and tried to play the note, but it always slipped away. It haunted him. He grew restless, unable to sleep, chasing the phantom melody. His friends visited, but he dismissed them, believing that if he could catch this perfect note, his life's work would be complete. Weeks turned into months. His hair grayed. One evening, after another failed attempt, he saw a figure reflected in the polished wood of his piano, a slender being whose skin seemed to shift between translucent and opaque. Its eyes were hollow, its mouth a single horizontal line. "Play my song," it whispered without moving its lips. The composer realized that a demon of sorrow had been feeding on his regret over notes never played, audiences never reached, songs never finished. When he set aside his quest for perfection and opened his doors to his neighbors, inviting them to play with him, the demon shrank until it could no longer be seen. The composer learned that the most beautiful songs are shared, not perfected in isolation. Regret, too, invites demons. In the borderlands between Noctis and Demacia, where fields give way to battle-scarred hills, there lived a simple farmer who had once been a soldier. He carried with him the memory of a single battle where he hesitated to raise his shield, and a companion fell. He returned to his farm, married, had children, and grew wheat. But every night the moment of hesitation replayed behind his eyes. His family noticed him staring out of windows, jaw clenched. One autumn, as leaves turned red, he began to see a figure standing among his fields at dusk. At first he thought it was a scarecrow, but it moved when the wind was still. Its hands were bound by rope, yet it gestured toward him. Its eyes were like coals covered by ashes. When the farmer approached, the figure spoke his companion's name. It was a demon of regret, drawn by a single choice and decades of unspoken guilt. The demon did not accuse him, it simply watched. The farmer avoided his fields after dark, but the demon appeared at his door instead, silent and patient. One night he sat on his doorstep and spoke his story aloud to the stars, naming his fear and his sorrow. He travelled to his companion's family, brought them harvest from his fields, and asked for forgiveness. They wept together, and as dawn broke, the demon untied its hands, its form thinning like smoke. By acknowledging regret and acting to make amends, the farmer freed himself. He still remembered his companion, but the memory no longer chained him. Among the most elusive of demons are those of delights, creatures born from the inversion of happiness and satisfaction. They are less like beings and more like echoes of laughter that continue long after the joke has faded. In ancient texts from the Shuriman libraries, scholars wrote of a group known as the Ten, of which Ashlesh is the joy that feeds on delirium and obsession. The texts hinted at a counterpart, a demon of delight that hunts in festivals, dance halls, and banquets. This demon wears many masks, each carved into a different smile. It coaxes revelers to stay one more hour, one more dance, one more cup. People laugh until their cheeks ache, then continue laughing because everyone else is laughing. Days blur. Food loses taste. The music never stops. Those who try to leave feel the demon's hand on their shoulder, gentle yet firm. Legend says that one year, during a flower festival in Ionia, this demon found itself facing kindred. Lamb stepped gracefully into the circle of dancers, her bow unstrung, and Wolf trotted along the shadows. "Your time is spent," Lamb said, and the demon laughed. "There is always more time for joy," it replied. But when Wolf snapped at its heels, the demon realized that all delights, no matter how sweet, must end. It fled, and the revelers collapsed in exhaustion. Since then, there have been whispers that some demons, though powerful, fear the merciful end that kindred brings. Chains appear not only in regret, but in obligations and promises. There is a tale from Zon of a young chem baron who inherited her family's business. She saw the suffering her company inflicted on workers, but felt bound by contracts signed generations before. At night, she dreamed of heavy chains wrapped around her hands. In these dreams, a demon sat across from her at a table strewn with ledgers. Each ledger was locked with a clasp, and each clasp was tied to a link of chain. "Profit is a promise," the demon whispered, its breath smelling of ink and rust. The chem baron woke with her hands, numb, phantom weight pressing on her wrists. Days later, she visited the factory floor. She spoke with the workers, listened to their stories, and realized that the chains she felt were expectations. She rewrote contracts, improved conditions, and accepted smaller profits. The night after she signed the new documents, she dreamed again of the demon. Its chains were lighter, its ledgers thinner. When it reached to show her a clasp, she placed her hand over it and said, "This promise is broken." The demon smiled sadly, gathered its chains, and left. The chem baron learned that obligations can bind, but they can also be renegotiated when they cause harm. The relationship between demons and the guardians of death is layered and mysterious. Kindred, the twin aspects of lamb and wolf, are not demons. They are the personification of death's inevitability and mercy. Yet many stories place them in opposition to demons because they represent a transition that demons delay. Demons of fear keep mortals awake and thus delay the rest that kindred offers. Demons of agony prolong the moment of suffering. Demons of delight extend revelry beyond what bodies can bear. When lamb draws her bow and wolf growls, even the greatest demon feels the pull of finality. There is a myth from the Freljord about a warrior who feared dying. He bargained with a demon of cowardice to avoid battle, hiding in caves when conflict arose. The demon grew fat on his fear. One winter, Lamb appeared to him, her fur dusted with snowflakes. "The end comes to all," she said softly. The warrior wept and asked for more time. Wolf circled him, teeth bared. "We wait for no one," Wolf said. Seeing that his fear had only delayed what was natural, the warrior thanked them and walked into the snow. When he died, the demon of cowardice shrank. Its feast had ended. This story is told not to glorify death, but to remind listeners that avoiding fear feeds demons, while facing fear draws the attention of kinder spirits. Different cultures have responded to demons through art and ritual. In Demacia, where magic is feared, ballads about demons serve as covert warnings. Bards sing of Fiddlesticks as a figure who appears when lies fester. Audiences whisper confessions to each other after such performances, hoping that truth will keep the scarecrow away. In the mountains of Targon, stargazers carve small effigies of Tahm Kench out of stone and throw them into rivers as a symbolic release of desire. In the vast deserts of Shurima, storytellers gather under night skies to recite epics of Atakan's rampages, not to glorify violence, but to remember the cost of bloodshed. They teach young warriors that glory obtained through slaughter invites ruin. In Zorn and Piltover, engineers design clockwork dolls dressed in straw and red ribbon and place them near children's beds. A playful nod to Fiddlesticks that nonetheless reminds children to voice their fears. In Bandle City, where yordles are attuned to whimsy, puppeteers enact cautionary tales about Evelynn using shadow puppets on colourful screens, turning her into a moral lesson about the difference between pleasure and pain. Even in Noxus, where power is prized, generals commission stained glass windows depicting Swain's ravens, each pane etched with a secret name. They encourage their soldiers to share secrets with their commanders rather than keep them bottled inside. Through art, communities name their demons and thus reduce their power. Writing, too, is a form of binding. Ancient Ionians practiced calligraphy not only to create beauty, but to stabilize emotions. Each brushstroke represented a breath. A student plagued by anger would be instructed to write the character for patience 100 times, each time exhaling slowly. Those who feared regret would write the names of ancestors who had faced difficult choices and survived. The act of writing turned swirling thoughts into ink that could be seen, touched, and thus processed. In Shurima, desert tribes used storytelling circles as a way to collectively face demons. The circle would begin with silence. One person would place a stone in the center and speak of a time they felt jealousy. The next would add a twig and speak of shame. As the pile grew, the group transformed the physical objects and emotions into a small altar, then burned it, sending smoke into the night. In the Freljord, hunters carve memories into the hafts of their spears. each notch representing a lesson, a vow, or a regret. When the spear is full, it is placed on a mountain top and left to be covered by snow, a symbolic surrender of burdens to the elements. These practices do not claim to banish demons forever, but they offer frameworks for acknowledging emotions, sharing them, and allowing them to change. In all these stories, a pattern emerges. Demons exploit isolation, secrets, and stagnation. They shrink in the presence of community, honesty, and movement. A sorrow shared becomes a song. A regret confessed becomes an act of repair. A delight savored fully becomes a memory instead of an obsession. The presence of kindred in some tales shows that even the end is part of the cycle. Resisting it feeds demons, accepting it brings peace. It is tempting to think of demons as purely external monsters, but they are reflections. Tahm Kench cannot devour a desire that has been transformed into generosity. Evelynn cannot find purchase in a relationship grounded in mutual respect. Fiddlesticks cannot find fear where courage and humour thrive. Swain's demon of secrets cannot manipulate minds when secrets are shared openly. Nocturne cannot reach those who turn nightmares into stories told around a morning fire. Ashlesh cannot warp joy when joy is balanced with responsibility. Atakan cannot feed on violence when communities choose dialogue over war. Demons are persistent but not all-powerful. As the moon arcs toward dawn and our lantern flickers low, picture yourself all standing in the center of Runeterra. To the east, the Ionian peaks catch the first light, their slopes dotted with shrines to balance and introspection. To the west, the cliffs of Bilgewater rise above crashing waves, their taverns filled with songs of caution and courage. To the north, the Freljord's glaciers gleam, their people huddled together for warmth, telling stories that blend hardship with hope. To the south, Shurima's sands glow gold, their people walking in the footsteps of ancestors who faced demons in the guise of emperors and gods. Above you, the Targon stars watch, their patient light reminding you that every emotion has its place. Around you, unseen but felt, the demons stir. They are present because you are alive and feeling. They whisper, but you are surrounded by people, by stories, by songs, by rituals. You might feel sorrow, regret, or desire, but you also have tools to face them. You can write, speak, sing, walk, dance, cry, laugh, and, when the time comes, rest. In the beginning, before cities rose and armies marched, before the names of kingdoms mattered and the stories of heroes were whispered, there were only feelings. Runeterra was young then, and its skies still new, and the hearts of its people pulsed with the raw force of life. From their dreams and fears, from their joys and sorrows, something ancient began to coalesce. Where the mortal world touched the spirit realm, emotions took shape, and, like fog turning into clouds, they became beings with purpose. They were not born as men or beasts are born, but rather woven from the threads of feeling. These were the demons of Runeterra, the oldest whisperers in the dark. The myths say that when the first lights of dawn touched the seas, a shadow already danced among the waves. It was not the shadow of any creature, but the shadow of fear itself. Fear, the most primal of all emotions, preceded even hope. It was a warning, a tightening of the chest, a quickening of the pulse that told the early tribes when to flee and when to fight. As fear grew in the hearts of people, it gathered in the spirit realm, condensing into a presence that could not be ignored. This presence would later come to be called Fiddlesticks, but it had many names before there were words to name it. It was the creak of a door in the night, the rustling in the cornfields, the crow that called when no one was near. It was the dread that wakes a sleeper and sets them staring into the night. Fear gave birth to the first demon, and with fear's child came a tapestry of dreams and nightmares, for wherever a life trembles in the dark, something may feed. Yet not all emotions are terror. Soon delight and desire also stirred, and from them emerged other beings. Agony, sorrow, delight, obsession, secrets. Each took its shape in time, each a mirror reflecting some part of the human spirit. These demons were not always malevolent for their own sake. They were expressions of human extremes. They existed because mortals felt deeply, and they fed because mortals could not help but dream and fear and long. The oldest tales told around the hearths speak of these creatures in hushed tones. Children heard warnings about staying away from the reeds at night, lest the River King lay in wait. Young lovers learned the songs that would draw blessings of joy and hope, and which songs would draw the attention of something else. Warriors crossing a battlefield paused when they saw a scarecrow on the edges of farmland, not because the straw figure seemed dangerous, but because the fields around it were too quiet. In those early epochs, the boundaries between worlds were thin. The spirit realm shimmered like heat above the stones, and sometimes the feelings of mortals spilled over entirely. Wherever suffering was great and joy was immense, wherever secrets were held and violence unleashed, the air would thicken with presence. These presences, these demons, did not appear with horns or bat wings. They manifested in ways that the human mind could accept. A scarecrow in the fields, a beautiful stranger on the road, a vagabond with a fine hat and a strange smile, a restless shadow that moved with nightmares. Every demon had a form, and every form was a message to those who saw it. The demon of fear has walked the earth for longer than any living memory. In some tales, it came from the cries of children lost in the forest. In others, it was a spirit that existed in the dark between the stars long before Runeterra was formed. What is known is this: Fiddlesticks is drawn to places steeped in paranoia. It hides at the edges of villages and along lonely roads, standing still as though it were only straw and cloth. But within that haggard frame, in the cage where a heart might be, there is a caged presence, a demon with no substance, no true body, only hunger. When people whisper about Fiddlesticks, they speak of a voice that is not a voice, a mimicry of a mimicry. The demon within has no tongue, so it uses the voices of those it has taken. The terrified laughter of a child, the pleading of a traveller, the final gasp of a soldier, all these echoes pass through Fiddlesticks and are thrown back into the night to lure others. Fiddlesticks feeds on fear. It watches, silent and motionless, until it senses the sharp spike of terror in a waking mind. Then, with unnatural grace, it moves. Its limbs are too long, its movements too jerky, and its scythe, a wicked, jagged thing, gleams in what little light there is. Those who see it often do not live to tell the tale. Those who survive speak in broken murmurs, their minds forever frayed. They say it comes when people forget the old warnings, when they leave the fields untended or let their lanterns burn low. They say its presence brings crows, and those who hear the sudden frenzy of wings should run. In the deep places of the world, Far from campfires and safe houses, other emotions found their shapes. Desire, a feeling that can be gentle longing or ravenous craving, gave birth to a creature that calls itself Tahm Kench. This demon has many names: the River King, the Ever-Hungry, the Gambler with the Golden Coin. He is not always monstrous at first glance. Sometimes he appears as a large man with a wide grin and a hat tipped just so. Sometimes as a traveller on a lonely road, sometimes as a whisper in the mind of someone staring at a placid river. Always he is hungry, and his hunger is not only for food, but for craving itself. He feeds on those who covet beyond reason. Tahm Kench is said to travel the waterways of Runeterra, his passage marked by a broad wake and the taste of salt even in freshwater streams. He seeks out unsuspecting prey people who desire something so deeply they would risk everything to get it. Perhaps a fisherman wants to land the largest catch, or a merchant yearns for wealth, or a lover longs to be loved in return. Tahm will find them. He will sit with them and smile, his teeth like polished coins. He will listen to their woes and speak in a voice as smooth as river stones. He may offer them a deal: no contracts, no spells, no signatures. He simply asks for something that seems small in exchange for granting their deepest wish. A travelled merchant might give up the taste of his favourite meal, or a soldier merely his last coin. Then, when they agree, Tahm opens his mouth. Within his belly is not a stomach, but an abyss. To fall within is to tumble through endless rivers, to lose oneself in the hunger of the world. Those who have been deep within Tahm say that they see their own desire reflected in the waters around them. They see the moments they craved most dearly, and each vision pulls at them until there is nothing left but longing. Yet Tahm Kench is not without charm. He struts through the physical realm like a vagabond, cane-tapping in time with some jaunty tune. He is whimsical and arrogant, easily amused and quick to boast. His large hat sits at a jaunty angle, and he will tell you it hides his eyes when he smiles. But the hat is only a distraction. His personality is twofold: part hospitable host, part sadistic bully. He delights in making deals not because he needs what he takes, but because he enjoys watching mortals grasp at what they desire. To him, the deal is a game, and his victims are players who do not know the rules. The artists and storytellers who once tried to capture his essence saw in him the mixed heritage of crossroads, devils, kappas of foreign myths, and leviathans lurking in the deep. In Runeterra, he is a being of addiction, greed, and craving. Where desire gave birth to gluttony, agony birthed another demon. In the shadow between love and hate, where pain becomes pleasure and pleasure becomes pain, there emerged Evelynn. At first, she was nothing more than a wisp in the vast spirit realm, a faint awareness that blossomed when the rune wars ravaged the world. Men and women fought with magic that tore the land asunder, and in the sky above and the earth below, suffering echoed. That echo took shape as a demon. Evelynn is ageless, but not ancient. Her birth is tied to the oldest cataclysm that mortals inflicted upon one another. She moves through the dark seams of Runeterra like a whisper of silk. Her form is that of a human woman, beautiful and graceful, with eyes that smoulder and lips that promise secrets. This is a lie. Evelynn's true form is nothing like human. Beneath the facade, her limbs become lashes tipped with wicked barbs, her skin shifts and darkens, and her mouth curls into something that loves to savor screams. Evelynn lures in victims with gentle touches and soft words. Those she chooses often believe they have found a lover or a friend. But the demon does not desire love. She desires agony. She elevates her prey to exhilaration, promising them delight so that their fall will be more severe. When the moment comes, she releases her true nature. Her lashes curl around her victims, drawing blood and cries, and she savors the pain as though it were nectar. She feeds on anguish, on the moment when ecstasy is replaced by terror. Evelynn was born from the agony of war, and she has walked the world ever since, always hungry for new suffering. She prefers happy prey because their despair is more potent when it comes. She takes her time, stretching the experience out with an artist's patience. When she finishes, she leaves behind ghoulish tales of love gone awry. To mortals, she is both alluring and terrifying, a cautionary tale whispered in taverns and boudoirs. The unspeakable torment she inflicts is her sustenance, her pleasure, and her expression of being. And though she has existed for centuries, the pain of the rune wars still echoes through her, a reminder of the day she took shape. In a world where desires and suffering roam free, secrets are another currency, and from secrets came another demon. This demon of secrets has no single name in the common tongue, for those who know of its existence dare not speak it. It lives in shadows and ravens, in whispers and lies. Once it roamed the spirit realm freely, flitting between minds to pluck the truths they hid. It delighted in hoarding knowledge, not to use it, but to relish the weight of what others wanted concealed. Its hunger was satiated not by the pain of others, but by the thrill of possession. When Jericho Swain, a soldier and then a general, fought for Noxus, he stumbled into a dark corner of the world where the demon of secrets waited. The story goes that Swain saw something others did not. Perhaps a raven perched with unusual intelligence. Perhaps a flicker in the corner of his eye. In that moment, he made a bargain. He would offer the demon something intangible, perhaps the secrets of his own heart, perhaps the promise of a new perspective in exchange for its power. But Swain is cunning, and the bargain was not balanced. He outsmarted the demon, binding it to his will. Now the demon of secrets serves as the dark eyes and ears of the Noxian Grand General. Through the demon, Swain can send ravens across Runeterra, letting them perch unseen, listen to the breath of dying soldiers, and retrieve fragments of memory from those who fall. The whispers that return show him glimpses of dark futures, helping him to foresee the consequences of war and to plan accordingly. The demon is not content, for it was never meant to serve. But its power is tethered by a mind as ruthless and unyielding as any other in Noxus. In moments of darkness, Swain's arm becomes a channel for the demon's influence. His eyes shine with an otherworldly glow. Those who meet his gaze sometimes see a flock of ravens swirling where his pupils should be. The demon of secrets is bound with chains of knowledge and will. It yearns to be free and to consume secrets without direction, but for now it remains within Swain's grasp, gathering memories, feeding on them, and whispering of what may come. While fear, desire, agony, and secrets each took shape in their own ways, nightmares themselves gave rise to another being. To sleep is to dream, and to dream is to let go of the waking world. In the dreams of mortals, there are fears that do not take shape in daylight. These fears brew into nightmares, and nightmares, when they are strong enough, can open a door. From this door slipped a shadow, drawn from every terrascape across Runeterra. It had no face to begin with, only a swirling dark mass and cold eyes that gleamed. Mortals called it Nocturne, the eternal nightmare, and the name stuck like a shiver down the spine. Nocturne is not bound to any one place. It dwells in the spirit realm, but it has learned to slip free. It is liquidly chaotic, a faceless shadow armed with wicked blades. When a person drifts deep into sleep and their mind conjures the worst fears they know, Nocturne may appear within the dream. At first it may watch, letting the dreamer twist and turn in the dark. Then it moves, tearing through the dream with its blades, feeding on the terror it creates. The more terror it consumes, the more solid it becomes. Those who are attacked by Nocturne in their sleep often wake suddenly, drenched in sweat, heart pounding. A rare few never wake again, their minds forever lost to the nightmare. Once, Nocturne was content to haunt dreams, but as time went on and the walls between worlds thinned, it found a way to slip into the waking world. When it descended on a battlefield or a quiet town, it brought with it a pall of darkness, like the moment before dawn that never ends. It feeds upon the kind of terror that can only thrive in true darkness, the fear of the unknown, of shadows moving just at the edge of vision. Those who meet Nocturne's cold eyes often freeze, their minds overwhelmed by the weight of every nightmare they have ever had. In a way, Nocturne is both less and more than a demon. It is the cumulative weight of nightmares, a manifestation of fears that may not be spoken. It is pure evil, not because it hates, but because it exists only to feed on terror. In the heart of ancient myths, there is mention of the 10-and-old story among spirit talkers and scholars. They say that among all demons, there are 10 that are older and more powerful than the rest, that existed before histories were written. These demons embody the most primal emotions, the ones that shape every breath of mortal life. One of them is said to be a demon of joy, a paradox perhaps, for joy is not easily associated with monstrosities. Yet, in the world of spirits, even joy can be twisted. This demon is called Ashlesh. Long ago, Ashlesh was bound by gods and heroes, sealed away because its influence was too consuming. Ashlesh is a demon of joy, but not of gentle happiness. It feeds on the inverted side of joy delirium, obsession, the reckless abandon that comes when joy is unchecked and grows into mania. When Ashlesh touched the world, singers sang until their throats bled, dancers danced until their feet were torn, lovers clung to each other until they could not breathe. The demon's delight was in pushing joy past its balance, turning celebrations into frenzies. For ages, Ashlesh's name was a warning, and its prison deep. But no prison is eternal, and there came a time when Ashlesh's power was sought. In an unseen chamber beneath a city on the other side of the world, a young ascetic named Neela sought to rid her people of a monstrous threat. The only way she could gain the strength required was to bind Ashlesh's power to her own. Binding a demon is no simple task. It requires sacrifice, and the sacrifice Neela offered was her entire self. She stepped into the darkness of a forgotten tomb and bound Ashlesh to her soul. In that moment, her existence was erased from the memories of all who had known her. Her family forgot her face. Her name vanished from stories. What Neela gained was power. The demon of joy now channels through her whip-like water weapon, giving her strength and agility. But Ashlesh is not silent. It allows Neela to feel only joy, not sorrow, not anger, not fear. Her voice is always cheerful, her laughter bright, even in the midst of battle. She cannot feel grief when she slays a beast, nor remorse when she leaves someone behind. This is the price. Neela lives in a world of joy because the demon in her soul feeds on that joy's extremes. As she slices through dark creatures and nightmares, she sings of adventure and delight. Behind her smile, there is no room for despair. Ashlesh's presence makes her a hero and isolates her from human feelings all at once. Across the map of Runeterra, in the deep chasms and the high peaks, war is a constant. The blood spilled in these wars feeds not only the ground, but the spirit realm as well. In recent years, an ancient demon of bloodshed and violence has returned to the forefront. This demon is called Atakan. Long before mortals built stone walls and marched with banners, Atakan walked the land, reveling in carnage. Wherever war went, it followed, drawn to the clash of steel and the cries of the dying. It was not content to merely observe. It agitated, whispering into the hearts of soldiers, telling them to strike when they might otherwise relent. Atakan is connected to Noxus in more recent days. As Noxus seized control of the rift in one of the world's grand arenas, Atakan emerged in a new form, an avatar of destruction. It is called an epic monster by those who train in that field, and it appears when the fighting reaches a certain pitch. At 20 minutes into a contest on the rift, it rises from the river, choosing to appear near the lane where the most blood has been spilled. Its form is influenced by the game itself. If the battle has been fierce and bloody, it becomes Ruinous Atakan, a towering embodiment of wrath. Those who dare to challenge it and win are granted rewards. Their strength is augmented, their perseverance increased. In this form, Atakan leaves behind a field of blood, roses, small blooms that absorb the violence of those who fell. Those who pick these roses gain knowledge and power, but they also take on the slightest fragrance of the demon itself. If the battle has been less violent, if caution has ruled and kills have been few, Atakan appears as Voracious Atakan. In this state, it offers a different reward, a temporary rebirth, a blessing that allows warriors to rise again once they fall. Whether in ruinous or voracious form, Atakan is a reminder that violence has a spirit and that bloodshed is not easily contained. The demon cannot be killed. It only retreats, waiting for more conflict. It is a force, a manifestation of the oldest hunger for war, and its presence on the rift changes those who fight there. Long before it became an avatar in a structured contest, Atakan terrorized the lands. It razed villages with storms of blades and rumbles of thunderous footsteps. When the minigame known as the Demon's Hand introduced Atakan to those outside the rift, it told of the time the demon paused its rampage to play a game of cards with a stranger cloaked in mysterious light. Even a creature of carnage could not resist the lure of a challenge, showing that the Aebar demons too are drawn to games of fate. In Ionia, where the spirit realm and the material world are closest, demons of a different kind flourish. These are the Azakana, minor demons born from specific negative emotions. They are weaker cousins to beings like Tahm, Kench, and Evelynn. While a great demon feeds on primal universal feelings, an Azakana feeds on something personal. A musician's fear of being forgotten, a scholar's self-doubt, a warrior's guilt. They manifest in a multitude of forms, reflecting the emotion that spawned them. One might appear as a twisted creature with the eyes of everyone a person failed, another as a mask that whispers about every regret a person harbors. Azakana have always existed, but they are growing in number. Suffering intensifies them. The Noxian invasion of Ionia left scars on the land and on the souls of its people. Many lost loved ones, homes, and faith. In the aftermath, negative emotions festered, and each festering sorrow gave rise to another Azakana. For the spirits of Ionia, and for those who understand the balance between realms, this is alarming. If the Azakana are not controlled, they may flood the world, feeding on despair until nothing is left. Yon, brother of Yasuo, and once consumed by vengeance, met his own Azakana after his death. He had carried anger and grief as he chased the man he believed had murdered their master. When he died, his soul entered the spirit realm. One would expect souls to find peace there, to move on to the next journey. But Yon's negative emotions attracted an Azakana that had followed him, feeding on his regret and wrath. It attacked, and he defended himself with all the skill of a swordsman, ultimately slaying the creature. Yet the victory had consequences. Yon awoke back in the mortal realm with a mask affixed to his face, the mask of the very demon he had killed. The Azakana's power lingered, allowing Yon to rip his soul from his body for brief periods, to traverse the spirit realm at will, to hunt down other Azakana and seal them into masks. The journey changed Yon. He was no longer a man singularly fixated on his brother. He understood that the past cannot be undone, and that regret is a demon one must face. The Azakana he hunts now are not always monstrous. Some appear as small, almost pitiable shapes that whisper of lost chances. But each one poses a threat, for negative emotions can twist and grow. Yon carries multiple masks, each a prison for a demon he has trapped. He seeks to learn the true name of the Azakana, whose mask he wears, for knowing a demon's name grants power over it. These minor demons illustrate that not all demons of Runeterra are grand or ancient. Some are the personification of everyday pain. There might be demons of regret that follow those who cannot forgive themselves, demons of sorrow that sit at the foot of a bed while someone cries, demons of shame that whisper in ears when people recall mistakes. They are not as strong as Ashlesh or Fiddlesticks, but they are more numerous. They attach to mortals quietly and drain them slowly, making them forget joy and hope. Scholars and spirit monks counsel people to confront their negative emotions, lest an Azakana latch on. They teach meditation and forgiveness as ways to starve these small demons. In the tapestry of Runeterra's history, demons are sometimes catalysts for great events. When the Rune Wars tore the world apart, Evelynn was born. When the Noxian invasion ravaged Ionia, Azakana multiplied. When Noxus rose under Swain, the demon of secrets was bound and turned to the will of one man, shaping the political landscape. When Nila bound Ashlesh, she ensured that the demon of joy would not break free and drive countless souls into delirium. When Atakan appeared on the rift, those who fought there were forced to choose between aggression and restraint, knowing the demon's form would adjust to the amount of bloodshed, and always in the background Fiddlesticks lurked, taking those who ignored the old warnings, reminding mortals that fear itself can consume. Demons influence wars not by wielding swords, but by preying on those who do. A soldier standing on the field might feel the whisper of Nocturne stirring in the back of his mind, reminding him of nightmares he thought long banished. He might see shadows where there are none, losing focus at a crucial moment. A general might suspect his advisor of betrayal because the demon of secrets has fed him whispers that are not fully true. In another place, a merchant might sell his house and abandon his family because Tahm Kench promised him a ship filled with gold. Demons do not force actions. They tempt, they influence, they magnify what is already there. Love is not exempt from demonic influence. Evelynn's victims often believe they have found love. Their hearts pound and their cheeks flush, and every look from her seems to promise eternity. But it is a hollow promise. She draws them in, feeds on their desire, then turns their joy into agony. In such stories, she is a cautionary figure. Love tempered by caution, pleasure tempered by wisdom. In other tales, it is said that those who call upon Ochlesh for joy may find it, but at the cost of never knowing sorrow again. They will laugh at funerals and dance in war, never understanding why the world looks at them with horror. Joy without sorrow becomes madness, and demons know this well. Loss and dreams are likewise fields where demons sow. A parent mourning a child may hear whispers at night and see a small figure in the corner of their vision. They may think it is their child, but when they reach out, their fingers pass through air. The demon of sorrow has come to feed, offering them a chance to see their loved one again. If they accept, they will be trapped in endless grief, unable to move forward. Nightmares come not only from fear, but from regret and shame. Nocturne knows that the deepest nightmares are not of monsters, but of real choices people made that they cannot undo. Dreams can be gentle, but even gentle dreams can attract as arcana if the dreamer fears losing them. As centuries pass, the demons of Runeterra evolve. They learn new forms and new hunting grounds. Evelynn adapts to new fashions and new cities, always shifting to remain appealing. Tahm Kench appears at bustling ports and lonely ponds alike, always adjusting his tone to match his audience. The demon of secrets has learned that information now travels across paper and through magic. So it listens for whispers on the wind and in the minds of messengers. Nocturne feeds on the nightmares of those who see arcane devices and do not understand them. Fiddlesticks remains largely unchanged. Fear is fear, whether it lives in a child's heart or a warrior's. Some demons ally themselves with mortals for short periods. Neela, as mentioned, has bound Ashlesh to her soul and channels the demon's power against larger threats. She hunts creatures from beyond the ocean and from within the earth. Though her bond erases her from memory, those who meet her feel drawn to her, for her joy is contagious. Swain's demon serves him, however unwillingly, allowing him to maintain the strength of Noxus not through brute force, but through knowledge. Fiddlesticks allies with no one. It is a predator that feeds indiscriminately. Tahm Kench makes deals, but is loyal to none. Evelynn has allies in the sense that those she leaves alive sometimes become obsessed with her, but she moves on. Nocturne, likewise, is solitary, though sometimes in nightmares it may appear with shapes reminiscent of other horrors, perhaps reflecting the fears of watchers who think all demons work in concert. Not all spirits in the world of Runeterra are demons. Kindred, the twin lamb and wolf, embody death and the acceptance of endings. But they are not demons. They are hunters of souls, delivering peace or chase, depending on how one faces death. They sometimes hunt those demons who overstep the balance. They say that kindred's arrows have pierced demons who lingered too long in one place, reminding them that every story must end. This hint has led some to speculate about a demon of delights or a demon of bliss that kindred might hunt, but within the lore known and spoken, such a demon remains unnamed. There are whispers in taverns and scholarly halls of demons of regret and chains. Scholars debate whether these are separate beings or manifestations of existing ones. When someone binds a demon, physical chains may appear, but chains are often metaphorical, promises, secrets, and regrets that hold one another. In Swain's case, the demon of secrets is bound by a bargain. The chains are not forged of iron, but of will and knowledge. In other tales, a demon of regret is not an entity, but a weight carried by those who cannot let go of past actions. Azarkana feed on regret, but no towering figure strides across the land calling itself regret personified. Instead, regret hangs over those affected like a shadow, whispering in the voice of the person who was hurt. The world does not need a demon to embody regret when those who feel it already carry such a burden. The present day of Runeterra is no less haunted than its past. Demons walk in busy cities and quiet valleys. Evelynn finds her way into bustling places, draped in the latest finery, seeking those whose pleasures hide pain. Fiddlesticks lingers in abandoned barns and stands at crossroads where no one travels, waiting for the one lonely soul. Tahm Kench swims under bridges where beggars lurk and alongside ships carrying precious cargo. He listens to whispers of desire and smiles. Nocturne spreads its wings over dreamers and watchers, spilling dread onto those who think themselves safe behind walls. Ashlesh laughs through Nyla's lips as she leaps across rooftops and along the decks of ships, bringing song to battles. The demon of secrets is bound within the Grand General's arm, its voice a constant murmur. It speaks of betrayals in Freljord, of assassins in Piltover, of spies in Bilgewater. Swain listens, sifts truth from lies, and acts, shaping the fate of Noxus and beyond. Azarkana roam the forests and the ruins. The scars of Ionia's invasion remain deep, and each scar is a potential nest for a minor demon. Yon hunts them, sealing them, each mask a testament to a regret confronted and conquered. He knows that he cannot rid the world of sorrow, but he can prevent sorrow from consuming those who cannot heal alone. In this, he is both hunter and healer. Though demons are feared, they are also seen as teachers by some. The monks of the First Lands teach that emotions must be acknowledged. Fear warns of danger. Desire motivates, but must be kept within bounds. Joy brings light, but must be balanced with sorrow. Secrets protect and also corrupt. Pain reminds one of what matters. They say that demons exist because mortals cannot live without these emotions. If one lives without fear, one may walk off a cliff. Without desire, one may waste away. Without joy, the world becomes bleak. Without secrets, honesty may hurt. Without pain, growth may stop. Demons, then, are the extreme manifestations of what keeps life vibrant. They are not evil as a simple creature might be evil. They are necessary, although dangerous parts of the world. In this understanding, facing a demon is not merely a battle. It is facing the extreme form of something inside oneself. When a hunter faces Fiddlesticks, he fights not only a scythe-wielding horror, but his own fear of the unknown. When a merchant bargains with Tahm, Kench, she confronts her greed. When a lover enters Evelynn's embrace, he touches the line between pleasure and pain. When Nyla binds Ashlesh, she accepts that joy and obsession are twin flames. When Swain binds the Demon of Secrets, he admits that knowledge is both power and peril. When Yon hunts Azarkana, he accepts that regret can either bind him or be transformed. When players on the Rift fight Atakan, they see that violence has a life of its own and that war begets war. The stories told to children across Runeterra are careful. They do not paint demons as unbeatable. Instead, they teach ways to coexist or to overcome. They teach that if you hear crows at midnight, do not linger. If a charming stranger offers you exactly what you most want, think twice. If a lover seems too perfect, look for the signs of what they might be hiding. If you feel something whispering in your mind, feeding your doubts, seek help. They teach that if you must keep a secret, guard it well, for secrets attract watchers. In the end, demons serve as part of the great balance. They are the tension in the rope that keeps mortals attentive. They are the mirror that shows a person what lies at the extremes of their emotions. They do not rule the world. They move at the edges. Runeterra's heroes and villains alike must navigate a world where the unseen is as important as the seen. The interplay between spirit and flesh, between feelings and forms, is what shapes the fates of nations. As day follows night and tide follows moon, so too do emotions cycle through light and shadow. Demons rise and fall with these cycles. There will always be fear, and so there will always be something to feed on it. There will always be Joyce, and so Ashlesh's song will never be truly silenced. There will always be secrets, so the demon bound by chains will always whisper. There will always be desire, and thus the River King will always roam. There will always be pain, and Evelynn will always dance. There will always be dreams, and Nocturne will always wait. There will always be regret, and so Azarkana will always be born. War will always exist in some form, so Atakan will always find a battleground. And yet there will always be love, hope, courage, and kindness. These virtues do not give birth to demons. They give birth to heroes, to the light that balances the dark. They give rise to those who stand at riverbanks and deny Tahm Kench's bargains, to those who look into Fiddlesticks' empty gaze and fight, to those who tell Evelynn they will not be fooled, to those who refuse to trade their secrets, to those who dream but are not ruled by nightmares. They give rise to Nyla's laughter that drives back despair, to Swain's vision that looks beyond selfish desire to the unity of a nation, to Yon's calm acceptance of his past. They give rise to everyday acts of bravery that starve Azarkana. The story of demons in Runeterra is not a story of defeat or victory. It is a story of balance. It is the story of mortals learning to acknowledge and live with their emotions without being consumed by them. It is a story whispered in hush at bedtime, a long, soothing tale that wraps around like a blanket, reminding listeners that though darkness exists, it is balanced by light. The demons of Runeterra are terrifying and ancient, but they are also known, named, and faced by those who walk in the daylight. So long as people remember this, demons will remain part of the world, not masters of it. So, lay your head down and listen to the soft rustle of leaves outside your window. If you hear the caw of a crow, smile gently and pull your blanket a little closer. If you feel the tug of a desire too great, breathe deeply and let it pass. If a shadow slips across your dreams, know that it is just a story. Remember that for every demon in the dark, there is a firelight in the heart of a home, and in that light the ancient tales are told, so that fear becomes only a whisper, and joy finds its safe place between sorrow and song. The night passes, and with the dawn comes understanding. Thus ends the tale of the demons of Runeterra, who were born from feeling, and will fade only when feeling ends, which is to say, never. But this is all right, for in the endless dance of emotions and beings, mortals find meaning, and demons find their place as mirrors in a world where hearts beat and dreams take flight. Yet the story does not truly conclude, for the tapestry of demons and mortals is woven with countless threads. After the hearth tales end and the last child has drifted to sleep, the elders of Runeterra sometimes whisper longer, deeper stories that do not always fit into a single night. These myths speak of the first mornings when the world was still damp with creation, and the spirit realm was so close that even the stones could feel it. In those days, the mountains of Targon were newly raised, and the people of the Freljord were only beginning to carve their homes in ice. Across the seas, the sands of Shurima had yet to hide their forgotten cities beneath dunes. Between every heartbeat lay a space where thoughts and feelings leaked into existence. That space was fertile ground for the birth of beings that were not flesh, beings made of feeling and memory. The oldest women of villages on the Serpent Isles tell of a time when the ocean itself seemed to sigh with the weight of unspoken fears. Fishermen would cast their nets and bring up not only fish but whispers, each a fragment of a dream lost at sea. These whispers clung to the hulls of ships, clinging like barnacles to wood, and when sailors returned to shore, the whispers slid off into the soil. The soil fed on them, and the soil in turn gave rise to small spectral sprouts that would grow into legends. Spirits and demons grew side by side in the mists. The spirits were gentle guardians of groves and springs, but the demons were different. They were dark reflections of the emotions that spilled from people. Because mortals sometimes chose cruelty over kindness, because they let secrets fester rather than speak them, because they allowed fear to rule them when courage was needed, the demons found easy nourishment. One story from the distant Freljord speaks of a time before tribes formed, when families clung to fire to survive the cold. A mother, heavy with child, stepped outside one night to gather ice berries, her heart full of worry. She thought of the future, of the small mouth she would have to feed, and that worry seeped from her into the frozen air. In the shivering glow of the stars, her breath crystallized and hung before her like a mist. Her worries stirred, taking shape in a gust of wind that whipped through the pines. That gust grew eyes. The eyes were dark and curious, peering down at her from the pine branches. A chill ran through her veins that had nothing to do with the cold, and she hurried inside. Behind her, the gust settled on the snow, leaving faint impressions of clawed feet. The next night, she heard faint scratching at the door and did not open it. She could feel her fear collected just outside, patient. In Freljordic's song, this is how the first fear demon came to watch over the snow, as a creature of wind that took root in the cold, drawn by a mother's worry. Similarly, the spirit sages of Ionia tell of the early days when their islands floated closer to the sky. In those days, the people of the Verse lands could see streaks of color where the spirit realm's waters flowed above them like rivers in the air. The colors changed with the emotions of those below. When a child laughed, the river sparkled gold. When someone grieved, it turned deep blue. On one night, when many hearts broke at once because of a great fire that consumed a village, the river turned crimson and began to swirl. That swirl spun into a figure that shimmered and flickered, echoing the cries of those who mourned. It drifted down, its form shifting with the smoke. It did not come to comfort, for it was born of grief that had no place to go. The elders lay offerings of tea and incense on the ground and murmured words of respect, not out of worship, but to acknowledge that their sorrow had birthed something real. This is how they say the first sorrow demon manifested, not to harm, but as a personification of grief so strong that it needed to be met and understood. Across Runeterra, early folk recognized that strong feelings called things forth. Hunters left small bowls of rice and dried meat at the base of trees, telling the forest that they knew fear existed and that they did not intend to let it fester. Fishermen whispered their desires to the river and then told their children never to shout their true wants over the water, lest a listening current carry those desires downstream to the hungry ears of the River King. When families held secrets, they wove knots into cord and tied them around their wrists so that the secrets would be bound to them rather than floating away to feed the demon of secrets. When groups came together to mourn, they sang long songs for the dead, so that sorrow would find expression and not turn into a heavy presence that followed them home. In these practices, they were acknowledging that emotions left unspoken could become something else, something that could think and act. Thus, the border between the mortal and the spiritual world was not a wall, but a threshold, and the early peoples of every region developed rituals to tend that threshold. The Freljordic tribes carved faces into wood and placed them in fields to watch the horizon. They believed these faces kept watch for fear itself. They also placed little bells on doorways so that if fear approached, the bells would ring and remind them to look outward. In the warm jungles of Ixtal, families grew vines over their doors. When someone was tempted to whisper a secret, they would speak instead to the leaves. The leaves would rustle, and the secret would be released into the wind to be harmlessly scattered. In Targon's high villages, people set cairns of stone at mountain passes. Each cairn held a small token from someone who had overcome pain or hunger. These tokens served as small, grounded anchors for the feelings that might otherwise drift upward and call a demon. As civilizations grew, stories about demons became part of their laws and art. In Shurima, where the sun disk glowed and ancient rulers ascended to godhood, murals were painted showing shadowy figures lurking behind the triumphs of heroes. The murals taught that even the greatest heroes could fall if they allowed despair or pride to overtake them. In Demacia, a kingdom that prizes order and honor, minstrels composed ballads warning of charming strangers who promised to solve every problem but demanded small, seemingly trivial things in return. The ballads always ended in ruin for those who accepted such deals. In the Ionian monasteries, monks inscribed long poems on tablets, each verse describing the subtle ways in which a feeling could twist into a being if neglected. This understanding of how emotions could coalesce into demons is central to Runeterran myth. It is not that demons appear out of nowhere. Rather, they are the concentrated forms of feelings that are strong enough to take on a will. A child's lonely, fear can call a shadow to its bedside. A nation's collective grief can give birth to something that howls in the wind. A lover's desperate clinging to joy can awaken an ancient song that never ends. From this foundation, the individual demons of Runeterra arose, each with its own story, its own shape, and its own place in the cycle of emotion. As we return to those individual tales, we must remember that each demon is not a foreign invader, but a mirror. If Fiddlesticks appears in a field, it is because fear took root there. If Kench knocks with a cane upon a door, it is because a desire burned so hot that it cast shadows long enough to call him. If Evelynn descends, graceful as night, it is because agony and ecstasy have intertwined so tightly in someone's heart that the lines between them have blurred. The mythic introduction and the stories that follow are not cautionary only. They are reminders that our emotions are powerful, and, when left untended, they can shape beings of their own. Consider again the demon of fear. Earlier, we spoke of Fiddlesticks standing at the edge of fields, its arms too long and its head an empty shell. Let us now sit with more time and more candlelight and tell the long version. In the heart of the Demasian countryside, where rolling hills are embroidered with rows of wheat, there was once a small farmstead tended by 3 generations. The grandmother, who had seen many winters, told her children to always harvest the fields before the crows grew too bold. She said that if you left your wheat standing after the first frost, you would invite something else to harvest with you. One year, the family grew complacent. A bountiful harvest had filled their granary early, so they left a small field uncut, telling themselves it could wait until the following week. That week, fog rolled in from the river and settled over the unharvested wheat. In the grey light, the family saw a figure among the stalks. It looked like a scarecrow, with a straw-stuffed body and old robes flapping in the wind. They laughed and wondered which neighbour had played a prank. But when the grandmother went out to move it, she found her hands trembling. As she approached, she heard a faint echo of her own voice calling her name. She paused. The figure turned its head, though its neck had no muscles to move it. She saw eyes like burning coals deep in the cowl, and the voice called her again in a perfect imitation of how she had sounded when she called her children in for supper the night before. She fled inside and bolted the door. That night, crows gathered on the roof, scratching and tapping as though impatient. The family sat together in silence, listening. Every so often, they heard a scrape at the door and a voice saying, "It is safe. It is me. Open up," using the grandmother's own tone. They did not. When morning came, the fog had lifted, and the figure was gone. The family told their neighbours, and the neighbours told others. The story grew and travelled. Children learned from that day forward that scarecrows are not to be trusted if they appear where no one placed them. They also learned the rhyme that is still sung in Demasian nurseries. When the wheat is high and the crows do call, do not tarry in the fields at fall. If a straw man stands where none should be, hide your face and flee, flee, flee. For he will wear your voice that night and open wide his arms in blight. Do not answer, do not heed. Fear itself has come to feed. The tale does not end with the family's caution. Another part of the story tells how a young soldier, hearing these stories, thought himself brave enough to face whatever lurked in the fog. He took his spear and went to the same field one night, planting himself among the stalks and waiting. The fog thickened, and from the mist emerged a shape. It was the Scarecrow again, but this time the soldier saw more. He saw that the wooden frame was hollow at its chest, and that inside the chest was a cage, and within that cage was something pulsing and dark. Two thin arms, not made of straw but of sinew and bone, snaked out from the cage, gripping the frame and moving it like a puppet. The Scarecrow's head sagged to one side, a mere decoration. Its true eyes were within the cage, peering through the slats. The soldier heard voices, so many voices, all calling his name. Some were his friends from childhood, some were his mother, some were the groans of men he had killed in battle. They all begged him to put down his spear and come closer. He realized that this thing could only mimic, that it had no voice of its own. He forced himself to look away and run. Though he survived, he never went into battle again without hearing those voices. The fear stayed with him, and Fiddlesticks fed on it from afar, content. In other regions, Fiddlesticks goes by different names. In Noxus, some call it the Harvester in the Hedges, a tale told to soldiers who have seen too much. They say that when a campaign has lasted too long and the men are exhausted, the Harvester appears at night, whispering to them that they can lay down their arms. In Piltover's outlying farms there is talk of the Tatter Man, a ragged figure that lingers by wells and wells. In Freljord it is known as the Breath in the Blizzard, something that calls to travellers who are lost in whiteout conditions. The forms vary, but the essence remains the same. A demon of fear that feeds by mimicking voices and by inciting panic. Its movements are always wrong one moment, lurching and stiff, the next fluid and too fast. It never speaks in its own tongue because it has none, only the stolen voices of others. Its head is just a gourd or a skull or a bundle of twigs perched atop a body that does not need it. The true demon peers from within, from that cage in the chest, unseen by most. Those who have glimpsed it say that the thing inside the cage is less a creature and more a mass of feeling fear made physical. The long tale of Fiddlesticks includes not only those who were terrorized, but those who tried to understand the demon. In a quiet hamlet near the borders of Noxus and Demesia, there once lived a scholar with a small library. He had always been a curious man, studying the interplay between the spirit realm and the waking world. When rumors of the Scarecrow reached him, he decided to watch from afar. He built a hide above his field and kept vigil night after night. In time, he saw the fog roll in and the figure appear. He watched as animals grew restless and as his own breath turned shallow. He recorded the pattern of crows, the timing of the voices. At dawn, he left bread and sweet wine at the edge of the field. He did this repeatedly, not as an offering to appease, but as a way of acknowledging his own fear and curiosity. After many nights, the figure stopped turning its head toward his house. It returned to the field, but no longer approached his door. The scholar concluded that fear feeds Fiddlesticks. Acknowledgement and understanding diminish its power. He wrote a treatise that few read, but those who did passed down a simple practice. If you fear something in the night, speak your fear aloud to someone you trust. Do not let it sit unspoken. In doing so, you starve the Scarecrow of its sustenance. Now, let us deepen our understanding of another demon whose presence is like a hungry tide, Tahm Kench. Where Fiddlesticks is a creature of fields and winds, The River King is bound to waterways. He is always wet, always smiling, and always hungry, not for fish, but for longing itself. Imagine an evening in Bilgewater, that lawless city built on shipwrecks and ambition. The taverns are loud with music and laughter, and the markets smell of salt and spice. A man sits at a battered table with a hand of cards, his boots propped on an overturned barrel. He has gambled all day and lost almost everything. His mind races. If he does not find coin tonight, the cutthroats to whom he owes will cut more than his purse. As he ponders, a shadow looms over his table. He looks up to see a large figure with a grin that stretches impossibly wide and eyes that glint like polished jade. The figure wears a top hat that would be comical were it not perched at so perfect an angle. He holds a cane with a golden handle shaped like a fish. "Rough night?" the stranger asks, his voice smooth as oil. The gambler shrugs. "If I had a coin, I'd be at a better table." The stranger laughs, a booming sound that makes the lantern light flicker. "What if I told you I could make your fortune turn?" he says. He sits, and his coat spreads like a puddle. Cards appear in his webbed fingers. "A game, then. One more hand. If you win, you have all the coin you need. If you lose, you owe me nothing you'd miss, I'm sure." Desperation blinds the gambler to the danger. He plays. The cards turn in his favor in a way that feels like destiny. He wins, coin piles up before him, and the stranger claps. "See, luck finds those willing to take a chance," Tahm Kench says. "Now, payment." The gambler reaches for his purse, but the demon shakes his head. "No, no, my dear boy. I told you, nothing you'd miss. Simply allow me to take the savor of your favorite meal." The gambler laughs, thinking it a joke. He nods. Tahm's tongue flicks out, impossibly long, and touches the gambler's tongue. It is not painful. It is a chill that lasts a heartbeat. Thereafter, when the gambler eats his favorite stew, it tastes like ash. Every meal tastes like ash. He can chew, he can swallow, but he never again enjoys a bite. He becomes wealthy but gaunt, his cheeks hollow. He still visits the tavern, but he no longer smiles. He gained riches and lost the ability to taste his food. For Tahm Kench, the meal of someone else's lost joy is delicious. He leaves the table with a chuckle, cane tapping, hat tipped. In another tale, the River King visits a Damascian noblewoman known for her collection of rare jewels. She sits alone in her estate, surrounded by glittering stones, yet she is not content. She wants the one gem she cannot have, a sapphire that belongs to the crown. Tahm appears as a well-dressed merchant. He shows her a box with a gem that glows like the sea. "Ah, lady, a gem fit for a queen." "It could be yours," he purrs. Her eyes widen. "What do you want?" she asks. "Only your favorite song," he replies. It seems silly to her. What is a song compared to a jewel? She accepts. Tahm Kench leans close, his mouth opening wider than seems possible. He inhales, and she feels something flutter in her throat. After he leaves, she takes the gem and runs her fingers over it, but when she tries to hum, no tune comes. Her mind is blank. Music, once her solace, is gone. She cannot sing, cannot even recall a melody. Her nights become silent, her new gem heavy. She sits amid her jewels, each as cold as the silence she gave herself. The River King has devoured her song, and he hums it to himself as he floats down the river, satisfied. Yet not all deals with the River King end in sorrow. There is an old story from a tiny Freljordic village about a fisherman named Rurik. Rurik loved the river and would catch enough fish for his family and leave the rest. One winter, ice formed thickly and fishing was nearly impossible. Rurik's neighbor, desperate and greedy, called out to the River King. The demon appeared, his eyes gleaming, and offered the neighbor a bargain, all the fish he could catch in exchange for his ability to swim. The neighbor accepted, and soon had nets bursting with fish. But when spring came, he slipped on a rock and fell into the river. He thrashed, but his limbs did not know how to move in the water. He drowned with his wealth. Rurik watched, shook his head, and returned to carving holes in the ice. Weeks later, Tahm Kench surfaced beside him. "You are a strange one," the demon said. "Why did you not call me as your neighbor did?" Rurik shrugged. "I need only what I can catch. The river gives, the river takes. I will not take more." Tahm stared, then slowly smiled. "Then you shall always have enough," he said. From that day on, whenever Rurik cast his nets, fish swam into them easily. Tahm Kench watched and did not interfere, for the river's balance pleased him more than any bargain. This story is told to children to show that greed invites the demon, but contentment sends him on his way. Tahm Kench's appearance changes across tales. Sometimes he is a monstrous catfish, his belly glowing with the lanterns of boats he has swallowed. Sometimes he is a gentleman with a waistcoat and gloves, his smile a crescent moon. Always he has the hat, tipped just so, and a mouth that can stretch enough to swallow dreams. The writer who once shaped his story said that his mouth represents more than hunger. It is a symbol of coveting and addiction. He is a reminder that wanting is part of being alive, but wanting without end is a path to ruin. He sings songs in languages no one recognizes, hums tunes that burrow into the mind. He is whimsical, vain, arrogant, and playful. He is also cruel in the way a river is cruel, indifferent to the lives it changes. He will sit by a person's side, share a smoke, laugh at jokes, and still, when the moment comes, devour that person whole without malice or delight. He is what he is, a demon of desire, a living appetite. Another demon born of an emotion as old as life itself is Evelynn, whose existence is intimately tied to pain. The rune wars that raged across Runeterra burned entire forests, split mountains, and tore the fabric of reality. They were wars fought with spells that scorched the sky and with weapons that pulled at the veins of the earth. Suffering during those wars was immense and unending. Soldiers watched their friends die, parents buried children, lovers were turned against each other by propaganda and enchantments. In that crucible of agony, something began to stir. At first, it was a thin, translucent thread in the spirit realm, a wisp that drifted like smoke. It did not know what it wanted. It only knew that it existed because of pain. It drifted among the echoes of screams and the imprints of broken hearts. Each time it touched pain, it grew stronger. It learned the taste of a soldier's grief, the sound of a child's sob, the color of a widow's tears. It began to become aware. In one version of the tale, Evelynn's first awareness came when she followed a trail of heartbreak to a clearing where a young woman knelt over the lifeless body of her lover. The woman wept until her body shook. Her hands clutched at clothes that would never again be worn. The demon hovered close, tasting the anguish. It stretched itself thin, wrapping like silk around the woman's shoulders. The woman shivered, a chill passing through her grief. Without realizing it, she felt a faint flicker of something else amid her pain, a desire to feel anything but grief. The demon sensed this, and, for the first time, it did not merely feed, it whispered. Its voice was subtle, a breeze through leaves. "Let me show you how pain can be beautiful," it murmured. The woman did not hear the words, but she felt a compulsion to hold the pain longer, to cradle it. Later, when she told her friends how her grief had become almost addictive, none understood. The demon smiled, for it had found its calling, to elevate agony, to gild suffering. As centuries passed, the wisp learned to take form. It learned that mortals responded to beauty, that pain offered through pleasure would be richer. It shaped itself into a form that would attract. It studied the ways people looked at one another and the glances that lingered. It fashioned a human geyser figure with curves and grace, with eyes that promised secrets, with a voice like velvet. It practiced smiles in reflective pools until it could mimic sincerity. Underneath the guise, it retained its true nature, a shifting mass of shadow and lashes tipped with barbs. Every movement it learned from lovers dancing and from predators circling. It became Evelynn, a name that rolled off the tongue like a sigh. Evelynn's early hunts are described in whispers, in Ionian tea-houses and in Noxian taverns alike. In one story, a travelling bard met her on a forest path. He was weary, his feet blistered, his heart heavy from unrequited love. He saw her standing by a stream, her dark hair flowing, her skin luminous in the moonlight. She smiled and invited him to sit. They talked of music and poetry, and he felt his sadness lift. Her fingers traced patterns on his arm, leaving trails of warmth. He leaned closer, his eyes closing, entranced. In that moment she changed. Her hand, once soft, split into a cluster of tendrils, each tipped with a hook. They plunged into his chest, not with the force of a sword, but with the care of a lover's embrace. He gasped, not from shock, but from a mix of pain and pleasure so intense it fractured his mind. She drew out his cry, letting it linger on her tongue like honey. She fed until his eyes grew dull, then withdrew, leaving him slumped at the edge of the stream, a smile still on his lips. When villagers found him, they whispered of a death that looked like sleep. They told their children not to follow strangers into the woods. In another tale, Evelynn moved through the gilded halls of an aristocrat's mansion. A feast was underway, with musicians playing and nobles laughing. Candles flickered, shadows dancing on polished stone. She wore a dress that seemed woven from the night itself. Heads turned as she entered, curiosity and desire flaring. She singled out the lord of the estate, a man known for his cruelty. Rumour held that he enjoyed watching the pain of others. Evelynn approached him, smiling. They danced, and he felt an exhilaration he had not known in years. As they moved, she whispered promises. When the dance ended, she led him to a secluded alcove. There she revealed her lashes, wrapping them around his arms and torso. He began to scream, but the door muffled his cries. She drew out his agony slowly, tasting it, savouring the moment when arrogance turned to horror. When she was done, she let him stumble back into the hall. He collapsed, trembling, tears streaming down his face. The nobles laughed, thinking him drunk. Evelynn left with a smile, her hunger sated for a time. Unlike other demons, Evelynn does not always bring ruin to her victims' lives. Some survive and become obsessed. A soldier who once felt her lashes may spend his life searching for that mix of pleasure and pain again, neglecting all else. A noble woman who danced with her might find her thoughts returning again and again to the moment when fear sharpened into rapture. Such people may wander the world, seeking Evelynn, unknowing that the demon has moved on. Their obsession feeds her even from a distance. For Evelynn, each person she touches becomes a note in her symphony of suffering, a chord she can revisit in memory. Evelynn adapts to the times. In the bustling streets of Piltover, she may appear as a refined lady with a mechanical monocle, speaking of innovation and progress. In the salt-stained alleys of Bilgewater, she may don rough clothes and a knife, appealing to those who live by edge and grit. In Ionia, she may wear silk and whisper of enlightenment. Always she chooses a guise that invites trust and desire. When she tires of one persona, she sheds it like a snake sheds its skin, and the world scarcely remembers her previous face. Those she leaves behind may recall a dreamlike beauty or a nightmare with no features. Such is the nature of a demon born of pain. It is ever-changing, ever-adapting, always seeking the richest harvest of agony. The demon of secrets, bound now to Jericho Swain, has its own long and winding tale. Secrets themselves are like streams that run underground, hidden yet shaping the land above. From the first whispers shared in caves to the coded missives carried by falcons over war-torn valleys, secrets are power. They protect and they destroy. They are currency in the courts of Demacia and in the alleys of Zorn. When secrets are hoarded, they grow heavy, and when they are betrayed, they cut deep. Somewhere in the folds of the spirit realm, a being came to exist that fed on the weight of secrets. It moved through minds like a fish through water, tasting the salty tang of guilt, the sharpness of betrayal, the sweetness of knowledge withheld. It did not reveal the secrets it consumed. It savored them, keeping them tucked under its tongue like precious gems. Over time, it became a demon, a thing that thrived in the shadows between words. For many years, the demon of secrets was free. It did not align with any nation or person. It whispered suggestions to spies, coaxed lovers to reveal infidelities, and listened at the edges of council rooms where strategies were hatched. It delighted most when two people passed each other with smiles while hiding daggers behind their backs. It delighted in hidden rooms, in letters written in invisible ink, in eyes that flickered toward hidden compartments. It would have continued thus, unseen and unfettered, had it not crossed paths with a man as hungry for power as it was hungry for secrecy. Jericho Swain was a soldier with a sharp mind and an iron will. In a battle on Ionian soil, he fought with his battalion and was gravely wounded. He lost his arm, and his body was broken. As he lay bleeding in the mud, he saw a raven alight near him. The raven's eyes were too intelligent, its head cocked as though listening to something beyond mortal hearing. Swain reached out with his remaining hand and touched the raven. In that moment, a flood of whispers entered his mind. He saw images, secrets of those around him, glimpses of hidden truths, hints of betrayal within his own army. He understood that this was not simply a bird. It was an avatar of something older and more cunning. He spoke to the being behind the raven. "I will give you a vessel," he said. "You will give me sight beyond sight." The demon of secrets, curious and hungry, agreed. The bargain was not equal. Swain is a man who plans not just one move ahead, but 10. He allowed the demon into his body, into the place where his arm had been. It filled the space, becoming a part of him. It could not leave without tearing itself free and destroying the body that housed it. Swain bound it with his will, with the force of his conviction in Noxus's destiny. The demon, expecting to devour Swain's secrets and then move on, found itself instead yoked. It could speak in whispers in his mind, but he could ignore or command. When he called, ravens gathered. Through them, the demon could spread its awareness, listening to conversations, tasting secrets, and bringing them back. Swain thus gained a network of eyes and ears across Runeterra. He saw glimpses of future calamities and moved to prevent them or to exploit them. He learned of plots against him and turned them to his advantage. The demon chafed. It had never been bound, never told what to do. It whispered to Swain of things he did not want to hear, hoping to distract him. It tried to show him visions that would confuse him. But Swain is not easily swayed. He is a man who believes that knowledge is power only when used wisely. He takes what he needs and discards the rest. When he hears the demon's sibilant voice urge him to act in haste, he responds with patience. When it tempts him to reveal what he knows, he remains silent. Over time, a grudging respect formed between the man and the demon. Swain does not trust it. The demon does not love him. They are partners in purpose because their goals align. Swain desires to control and to unify, and the demon desires to gather secrets. Each is aware that if the other grows too weak or too strong, their delicate balance will break. The demon of secrets influences more than just Swain. Through him, it touches those who speak into the raven's ear. Spies whisper into black feathers, never knowing that their words pass through a demon's mind. Soldiers find ravens watching them on the eve of battle and are reminded to guard their tongues. In the markets of Piltover, rumors spread quickly, and sometimes a raven perched on a roof caws at exactly the right moment to change the course of gossip. In the court of Demacia, a raven's presence may indicate that someone's confession will not remain private. People learn to fear the bird not for itself, but for what might be listening. And deep inside Swain, the demon continues to savor each secret, its hunger satiated and stoked at once. Nocturne, the nightmare made flesh, moves differently through the world. It is not bound by bargains or interested in deals. It is pure terror given form, drawn from the nightmares of every sentient mind. When children anywhere in Runeterra close their eyes and see shadows clawing at them, a fragment of Nocturne grows stronger. When adults fear failure, heights, spiders, or the depths of the ocean, those fears contribute to the churning mass that is Nocturne. It is not a single being as much as a convergence of fears, a collective nightmare that breaks free when the veil between sleeping minds and the spirit realm thins. In one prolonged tale told in the temples of Targon, a novice named Iona sought to confront her fear of falling. She climbed the mountain paths at night, determined to look over the precipice and feel nothing. That night, as she approached the cliff, a darkness thicker than moonless sky descended. It smothered the stars and muffled sound. Out of that darkness came eye slits of blue, cold light. A form materialized, shifting like smoke into a sleek shape with bladed arms. It circled her, whispering not with a voice but directly into her mind. It reminded her of every time she had stumbled on the path, every time she had fallen as a child. Her knees weakened. do you think you can stand against me?" Nocturne's presence seemed to say. Iona closed her eyes and instead heard the voice of her mentor, an old woman who had faced her own fear long ago. "Feel the rock beneath your feet," the mentor had said. "Focus on what is real." Iona reached down and touched the stone. Its solidity anchored her. She opened her eyes. The darkness surged, but she stepped forward, not into the void, but along the path. The figure hissed and withdrew. The nightmare could not consume her while she clung to the present. This story is used to teach novices that acknowledging fear and grounding oneself in reality can weaken the demon that feeds on nightmares. Not everyone can anchor themselves so easily. In a quiet farmhouse in Ionia, an old man named Juro experienced recurring dreams of a beast with blades, for hands pursuing him through his rice paddies. Each night he woke at the same moment, heart pounding, sweat cold on his skin. He told his neighbors, who advised him to place protective charms by his bed. He did, but the dreams continued. One night, instead of running, Juro turned to face the beast in his dream. The dream blurred, and he saw his younger self running away from the battlefield where he had left his friends to die. His nightmare was not about a monster. It was about guilt. When he accepted this, the bladed figure shrank, becoming less terrifying. It lunged, but he did not run. He woke with tears in his eyes, but his heart was lighter. The next night, the dream did not come. Nocturne thrives on unacknowledged fear, guilt, and shame. When faced and processed, those emotions lose their power to call the nightmare. In a very different part of the world, a group of mages in Zaun attempted to trap a fragment of Nocturne as part of an experiment. They believed that by capturing a nightmare, they could study fear and perhaps use it as a weapon. They carved runes on the floor, burned herbs that induced dreams, and chanted incantations to thin the veil. In the dim green light of their laboratory, the air grew cold. A darkness seeped from the walls, coalescing into a shape that circled the runes. The mages held their breath. Nocturne's form flickered into existence. It did not speak, but each mage suddenly remembered their deepest fear. One saw himself drowning. Another saw a loved one dying because of his ambition. A third felt the pressure of a family legacy. The runes flickered. The nightmare flowed over them like water. There are no cages that can hold fear itself, and the mages soon realized their mistake. They scattered, and the thing dissipated, leaving a cold dampness that lingered. The experiment taught them nothing except the futility of thinking one can trap what exists in every mind. Nocturne's presence in the waking world often portends disaster. Soldiers in the midst of battle may suddenly see the sky darken and feel claws at their backs, causing them to falter. Sailors at sea may wake to find themselves unable to move, a shadow sitting on their chests, whispering of the deep. Children may develop fevers from nightmares that do not end. Healers and clerics have learned rituals to soothe such minds. They burn calming herbs, sing quieting songs, and hold the hands of those plagued by nightmares. In Ionia, they call upon the spirits of the first lands to watch over sleepers. In Demacia, mothers place small stones, blessed by priests under pillows. In Noxus, soldiers teach each other chants to repeat before sleep, focusing their minds on camaraderie and strength. Where such practices prevail, Nocturne finds less purchase. It is not destroyed, but it is kept at bay, starved by the light of community. The demon of joy, Ashlesh, belongs to an ancient circle known as the Ten. These are said to be the most powerful of their kind, embodiments of emotions that shape the world. Ashlesh's story is the most accessible because of Neela's bond, but there are older verses and tales that speak of its nature long before humans bound it. In the eastern Shimmerlands, there is a ruined amphitheatre hidden beneath vines. Its stones are etched with images of dancers and singers spinning in ecstatic circles. Scholars believe this place was once dedicated to Ashlesh. They say that during a festival that lasted 10 days and 10 nights, people came from all regions to celebrate. The first nights were filled with music and laughter. As the festival wore on, the dancing grew wilder. Feet bled, voices cracked, and still the crowd sang. They spun and spun until the ground shook. In the center of the amphitheatre, a presence arose, drawn by the joy turned manic. It whispered to the dancers, urging them to leap higher, to sing louder, to ignore the pain in their limbs. They obeyed, not because they were compelled, but because they were already on the edge. When the sun finally rose on the 11th day, the crowd collapsed from exhaustion. Many never woke. Those who did spoke of a sensation like being lifted by invisible hands, like floating in music. They felt emptiness after, a lethargy as if all their joy had been spent. The amphitheatre was abandoned after that, for it had become a place where joy's shadow lingered. In another ancient tale, a prince sought to bring endless happiness to his people. He decreed that there would be no more mourning, no more weeping in his realm. When someone died, he ordered that bells be rung and dancing commence. When crops failed, he commanded everyone to attend feasts to forget their hunger. The fields lay unworked, the granaries emptied, and still the music played. In the palace, a voice began to be heard. It was light and lilting, and told the prince that his vision was noble. It promised to help him keep his people joyous forever. The prince, exhausted from forcing happiness on people, listened. Soon he saw a figure in his chambers, a being of shimmering light with many arms, each holding an instrument. The figure played melodies that made the prince laugh until he cried, yet he felt no sorrow. The more he laughed, the more the figure's eyes gleamed. Outside, people danced until they collapsed. Children did not learn to balance work and play, they only played. When winter came, the realm was unprepared. Many died. The prince, realizing too late, begged the figure to stop. It laughed and said, "Why stop when everyone is so happy?" The prince then prayed to ancient spirits to intervene. Through a series of chants and offerings, the spirits bound the figure within a crystal chamber beneath the palace. The prince died, his last thought not of regret, but of the song still humming in his ears. The palace eventually crumbled, but beneath it, some say, Ashlesh still waits, humming a tune that only those with ears for ancient joy can hear. Neela's binding of Ashlesh, centuries later, was born of necessity and courage. A monstrous creature from the deep threatened her city, devouring ships and dragging whole blocks into the sea. The elders, having read of Ashlesh, knew of the demon's power to empower those it inhabited. They also knew the cost. Neela, young and determined, volunteered. She descended into the depths of a forgotten temple, carrying nothing but her faith and her training. She entered a chamber lit by an unearthly glow. In the center was a pool that rippled with colors that defied description. Voices sang from the water. They were harmonious and discordant, inviting and menacing. Neela knelt and chanted the words the elders had taught her. The waters rose, shaping into a form that was both human and not, a being of light and shadow with eyes like mirrored pools. "Who calls me?" it asked. Nyla introduced herself and said she sought to bind the demon to her soul to save her people. Ashlesh laughed. "You will feel only joy," it said. "You will lose yourself." Neela nodded. "I give myself willingly." She stepped into the pool. It enveloped her. The voices surged. She felt every sorrow, fear, anger, and joy she had ever felt. Each emotion burned bright and then faded until only joy remained. Her mind felt light, her thoughts airy. She heard her mother's laugh, the cheering of friends, the song of the sea. These sounds filled her entirely. When she emerged, she held a whip made of water and light Ashlesh's manifestation. She no longer remembered the faces of her parents. They no longer remembered her. She felt no regret, only a constant hum of joy. It was intoxicating and isolating. Bound together, Neela and Ashlesh hunt monsters and demons. They leap from rooftop to rooftop, singing as they battle. Nyla's voice rings clear, always in a major key. Her laughter cuts through the roar of beasts. She cheers even as she slays, for sorrow and fear cannot touch her. When she sees a child crying, she comforts them with stories but cannot truly understand their pain. She is an inspiration and a stranger. People follow her into danger because her joy emboldens them, but afterward she slips away, never staying long enough to form attachments. When she sits alone at night, looking at the stars, she still smiles. Ashlesh hums with her. She wonders sometimes what sadness feels like, but the thought is fleeting, drowned in the ever-present song. Her sacrifice saved her city, but the price was her own humanity. Through her, we see that joy, when unbalanced, can be as destructive as any other emotion. Atakan, the demon of bloodshed and violence, is less subtle. Its origin stories vary by region, but they all agree on one point. Where there is war, Atakan is near. In ancient Shurima, when the Ascended marched with golden spears, Atakan followed in the dust clouds, kicked up by their boots. It whispered to soldiers who were tired and might have considered mercy. Strike again. It roared in the ears of generals who weighed retreat, attack once more. In the icy north, Atakan is said to have been a storm that accompanied raiders. In each raid, after the first house was plundered, those who might have stopped were consumed by a frenzy. They broke down doors, burned barns, and slew those who surrendered. Later, they blamed the storm for their bloodlust. Atakan rode the wind, they said. It made us forget ourselves. One of the longer tales of Atakan recounts a battle between two Noxian legions. Yes, Noxians have fought each other when political machinations pitted loyalists against rebels. On one such night, the battle turned stalemated. Both sides were weary, and the commanders considered parley. As the soldiers sat in their trenches, a low rumble shook the earth. From the direction of the river, a monstrous figure emerged. It was not of flesh, but of stone and blood. Its body was an amalgam of blades and armor scavenged from battlefields. Its head was horned, its mouth dripping crimson water. It towered above the soldiers and bellowed, the sound causing armor to vibrate. Each soldier felt a surge of adrenaline, a hunger to fight, a desire to prove themselves worthy of the monster's attention. They leapt from their trenches and charged. Those who had moments before been willing to negotiate now fought with abandon. The battle raged through the night. When dawn came, Atakan was gone. The field was covered in the dead. Survivors spoke of a demon that incited them. Noxian commanders studied the event and later built strategies around it. They realized that Atakan's presence could be harnessed if understood. Thus, in a future conflict on the Summoner's Rift and Arena, where demons and mortals are studied as well as fought, Atakan was bound and controlled to some extent. It was allowed to manifest only after 20 minutes, and its form changed based on the violence already committed. In ruinous form, it rewarded further aggression. In voracious form, it offered second chances. Warriors and tacticians learned that the demon can be a tool as much as a threat. The minigame known as the Demon's Hand adds a whimsical layer to Atakan's myth. In that story, the demon, long ago, laid waste to a dozen villages in one night. It marched with soldiers and stepped on small homes as if they were ants. People fled, and the demon laughed. Then, one evening, a stranger appeared before Atakan. The stranger was cloaked in light so bright that Atakan paused. The stranger held out a deck of cards and said, "Play with me. If you win, you may devour me and continue. If I win, you must delay your rampage." Atakan, curious and proud, agreed. They sat at a makeshift table in the ruins of a house. Their game lasted through the night. Each card played corresponded to a tale of war. Each hand reflected a strategy or a folly. In the end, the stranger won by playing a card that Atakan had dismissed. Bound by its word, Atakan retreated. The stranger vanished. People rebuilt. This tale is often told at festivals as an allegory. Even the greatest violence can be stayed by wit, and even demons can be drawn into games. It also hints that demons have curiosities beyond their hunger. Atakan's presence in the modern Summoner's Rift has been codified by scholars and summoners. They have charted when it appears, where it walks, what boons it grants. They know that if their teams fight fiercely, the ruinous form emerges, and if they fight cautiously, the voracious form appears. They study the blood roses that bloom where it has bled. These roses smell of iron and smoke and carry a faint glow. Those who pick them report visions of past battles. Some say that the petals whisper tactics long forgotten. The boons Atakan grants are powerful, but come with a cost. They bind the recipient to the cycle of violence. A warrior who accepts Atakan's reward may find themselves unable to set down their sword even after the battle is over. They dream of fighting and wake with a restlessness that drives them to seek conflict. This is Atakan's greatest gift and curse. It makes warriors into legends and then into ghosts who can never rest. In the shadow of grand demons like Atakan and Ashlesh lie the lesser demons, the Azakana, and the unnamed spirits of regret, sorrow, and chains. Each may seem small, but each can hollow a heart over time. Imagine a scholar in Piltover who spends her days crafting intricate hex-tech devices, pushing the boundaries of science. She is brilliant, but a small voice in the back of her mind whispers that she is a fraud, that her success comes from luck, that she will be exposed. That voice feeds her fear of being discovered. She works longer hours, skipping meals, isolating herself. She feels eyes on her even when alone. She sees shapes in the corners of her laboratory. One evening, she turns and glimpses a figure no taller than her desk. It is humanoid, but emaciated, with large, watery eyes and long fingers. It clings to the ceiling, whispering her doubts back to her. This is an Azakana, born of imposter syndrome, a demon of self-doubt. It thrives on her insecurity. If she acknowledges her feelings and speaks to her peers about her fears, the demon shrinks. If she hides her insecurity, the demon grows. Azarkana like this one are insidious because they mimic personal thoughts. There are Azarkana of regret that sit at the foot of old warriors' beds. These demons have slumped shoulders and eyes full of tears they cannot shed. They whisper the names of those the warrior could not save, replaying scenes from battles long past. The warrior hears the whispers and feels heavier each day. Sometimes, if he speaks those names aloud and lights candles for them, the demons retreat. Other times, the weight is too much, and the Azarkana digs its claws deeper. There are demons of sorrow that perch on rooftops in winter, dropping small icicles like tears. They feed on the grief of those who sit alone by cold fires. They hum songs that make sorrow sweet, encouraging people to linger in their sadness rather than healing. There are demons of shame that wear masks like mirrors, forcing those they haunt to see their own faces twisted by past mistakes. They hide in closets and behind curtains, emerging at moments when their host feels most vulnerable. Chains, as a metaphor, often appear in stories about demons. They represent obligations, promises, and addictions that bind a person. Swain's demon is said to be bound by chains of knowledge. In another legend, a blacksmith in Noxus forged actual chains imbued with runes meant to bind a demon of regret. He believed that if he could capture his regret and lock it away, he would be free. He hammered day and night, pouring his sweat and tears into the metal. When the chain was complete, he sat in his workshop and summoned the demon. It appeared as a smoky figure with eyes like dying embers. "Bind me," it whispered. The blacksmith wrapped the chain around the demon. For a moment, the regret disappeared. He felt lighter, but the chain began to heat and burn his hands. It fused with his skin, traveling up his arms and across his chest. His regret was not gone. It had become part of him. He learned that regret cannot be locked away in a chest or bound with iron. It must be acknowledged and transformed. The story ends with the blacksmith cutting the chain, link by link, each link a conversation with those he had wronged. Only when he sought forgiveness did the chain crumble. Yon's journey among Azarkana is filled with such lessons. After killing the demon that attacked him, he awoke with the mask of the Azarkana fused to his face. The mask did not simply sit on his skin, it bonded with his soul. It allowed him to step between the mortal and spirit realms. Each time he enters the spirit realm, he feels the weight of the mask. It is both a burden and a key. He travels across Ionia, sensing where Azarkana gather. He finds a farmer haunted by a demon of jealousy toward his neighbor's crop. He finds a young woman pursued by a demon of abandonment that whispers that her friends will leave. He finds an old warrior visited by a demon of guilt. Each time, Yon engages the demon, sometimes with words, sometimes with a blade. He traps them in masks and carries the masks with him, a collection of regrets and sorrows made tangible. He hopes that by studying them, he might one day learn the true name of the first Azarkana he slew. He believes that names have power, and when he knows this demon's name, he will understand more about his own fate. He also knows that he can never eradicate all Azarkana. They are born as long as negative emotions exist. His purpose is not to end them, but to help mortals face them. Ionian monks teach many methods to keep Azarkana away. They instruct novices to meditate and name their emotions. Naming a feeling is like placing it in a bowl. A named feeling cannot as easily slip away and become an asakana. They also teach gratitude practices, encouraging people to note moments of beauty even amid sorrow. In Dematian villages, priests lead rituals where people write down their regrets and burn them, symbolically releasing them. In Noxus, some use physical exercise and camaraderie to process negative emotions. In Shurima, stories are shared around communal fires, each person telling of a time they felt regret, pride, or sorrow. As they speak, the feelings are shared and dissipated, denying Asakana a chance to feed. Through these stories, we see that demons are not only ancient horrors, but also present companions to those who do not tend their feelings. They vary in size and power, but they all feed on imbalance. They thrive on secrecy, unacknowledged fear, unchecked desire, unprocessed grief. They are part of the world as thunderstorms are part of weather. They do not need to be feared if they are understood. In facing them, mortals face themselves, and though this can be challenging, it is also liberating. It teaches empathy. Those who confront their own demons become gentler with others, recognizing that everyone carries burdens. Our story now circles back to its beginning. We have wandered through fields haunted by scarecrows, sailed on rivers where a hat bobbed just beneath the surface, walked through halls where silk hid barbs, sat with a general who hears whispers on black wings, stood on cliffs where darkness pressed in, danced in abandoned amphitheatres, watched warriors charge under a blood-red sky, and sat by the bedsides of those who wrestle with doubt. Each tale has been slow and gentle, like the turning of pages by candlelight. Each has held the knowledge that demons are part of the fabric of Runeterra, not to be worshipped, not to be denied, but to be acknowledged and balanced. In this extended lullaby of lore, perhaps the most important lesson is this: stories themselves are a kind of magic. They name things, they frame them, they give them form. When elders tell children about Tahm Kench, they are not only scaring them away from greedy bargains, they are giving them the words to understand their own desires. When lovers whisper of Evelynn, they are not only gossiping, they are helping each other recognize when pleasure becomes harmful. When soldiers recall seeing Fiddlesticks, they are not only sharing trauma, they are reminding each other to keep their fear from growing unchecked. Stories are the human way of binding demons, of setting boundaries around emotions. They are chains made of words and remembrance. They do not restrict life, they protect it. They allow people to feel and to process without being consumed. And so, dear listener, as you reach the end of this long tale, let it settle like rain on parched soil. Let the images drift through your mind: river waves, straw fields, shadowed halls, soaring cliffs, gleaming amphitheatres, firelit camps, quiet huts, and see in each the presence of emotions shaped into beings. Know that for every whisper in the dark, there is a song in the light. For every demon born of pain, there is a healer born of compassion. For every nightmare that claws at the edges of sleep, there is a hand to hold. For every secret that weighs on the heart, there is a friend to share it with. If you ever feel a presence by your bedside at night, perhaps it is merely your mind sorting through feelings. Perhaps it is the memory of a story you have heard. Smile gently, acknowledge what you feel, and rest. In the morning, tell your story. Add your voice to the endless chorus of Runeterra. In doing so, you place another stitch in the tapestry that keeps demons in their place and emotions in balance.